Hello everyone and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. We are in chapter 53. This is 53d. This is the end of the chapter before the last chapter. So let's begin with some Tehillim. Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim shabechu kol haomim ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai leolam hallelujah. Something that I did notice though, and if you catch this right now, please do this. Hit the thumbs up thing, okay? It's important because if at least half the people that are watching this do the thumbs up, it'll definitely help the video. So if you can, remember this for the future as well. In any case, this one is called Avshalom and the 7 Realms of Hell. So we pick up where we left off last week with the subject of Avshalom and the feature which he was most prevalent for. This was his long hair, of course, and this is also what brought about his demise. Avshalom by his hair. And Avshalom was a mighty man of war, with great strength, and his sword was always strapped to his thigh. Why does the text tell us this? First, to show us that he himself always led his men into battle, regardless of his rank. To show the contrast of how David used to be, but in his old age, David's men actually held him back, right? So when David, he's the king, but the king led everyone into war, leading by example. So, but in his later years, he couldn't do it anymore. Why? We could see this in 2 Samuel 21, where David almost got killed by one of Goliath's 4 brothers, who were also giants. And the Philistines waged war again with Israel, and David went down with his servants, and they fought against the Philistines. But David became faint. And Ishbi, who was one of the sons of Rapha, or rather Orpah, was in Nov, and the weight of his spear was 300 shekels of brass in weight, and he was girded with new armor, and he thought to smite David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, aided him, and he struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, "You shall no longer go out with us to battle, so that you extinguish not the lamp of Israel." Because if you go, everything falls apart. So you remember who Orpah was, right? Okay. She was a sister-in-law of Ruth, the one who chose not to follow Naomi. While Ruth became the great-grandmother of David, Orpah became the mother of Goliath and his brothers, or grandmother. In any case, all giants, all with 6 fingers and 6 toes, as the text states very clearly in verse 20, and there was again war in Gath, and there was there a man of great stature, and the fingers of his hands and the toes of his feet were 6 and 6, totaling 24, and he too was born to Orpah. Okay. By the way, Oprah, her real name is Orpah. No joke. They just messed it up on the certificate, just so you know who you're dealing with. Anyway, now in addition to Avshalom always charging into battle like a true warfighter, he always carried his sidearm on his thigh. Wherever, whenever, he was always ready to go. Keeping this in mind, our text continues. And so why did Avshalom not unsheath his sword, which he absolutely had on him at the time? There's no question, right? And cut his own hair, setting himself free. Like we said in recent classes, as we read from our text, he saw hell opening up beneath his feet and said, "It would be better for me to hang by my hair and not descend into the fire." That is why he remained hanging on the terebinth, as said in 2 Samuel 18:10. And a man saw it and told Yoav, like we discussed. And he said, "Behold, I saw Avshalom hanging in the terebinth." Now let's get educated on this opening to hell, Gehenna, because there are 3 openings and 7 levels. In Masechet Eruvin 19a, it says, Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said, "There are 3 entrances to Gehenna, one in the wilderness, one in the sea, one in Jerusalem. In the wilderness, as it is written in Numbers 16:33 regarding Korach and his people, they and all they possessed descended alive to Sheol, וירדו הם וכל אשר להם חיים שאולה, right? Sheolah is into Sheol. The earth covered them up, and they were lost to the assembly. In the sea, as it is written in Jonah 2:3. We covered this. And he said, I called out from my distress to the Lord, and he answered me from the belly of Sheol. I cried out, you heard my voice. So if you recall our earlier Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer teachings regarding Jonah and his entire journey in the belly of the fish beneath the sea, you got to listen to that teaching, and all the things that he saw, including the Leviathan, including Korach and his people, praising God and Moses from the pits of hell. Now, if you missed it, the teaching is called What Lies Beneath, Creation, the Fifth Day. Take a look. And in Jerusalem, as it is written in Isaiah 31:9, and his rock shall pass from fear, and his princess shall be dismayed at the miracle, the word of the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, and whose furnace is in Jerusalem. So, Neum Hashem asher ur lo beTzion v'tanur lo beYerushalayim. And it was taught in the school of Rabbi Ishmael, whose fire is in Zion. This is Gehenna, and whose furnace is in Jerusalem. This is the entrance to Gehenna. This is the same furnace of which God showed Abraham from Genesis 15:17. Vayhi hashemesh ba ve'alata haya ve'ine tanur ashan ve'lapid esh asher avar bein hagzarim ha'ele. Now it came to pass that the sun had set, and it was dark, and behold, a smoking furnace and firebrand, which passed between these parts. The same furnace from which God saved Abraham and will save his seed, as he said in Genesis 15:7. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you forth from Ur, furnace of the Chaldeans, right? To give you this land to inherit it. Which land? This one. The same one that will be coming for the wicked, the same tanur, the same furnace that will be coming for the wicked at the end of days in Malachi 3:19. For lo, the day comes glowing like a furnace. Ki hine hayom ba bo'er katanur, right? And all the audacious sinners and all the perpetrators of wickedness will be stubble. And the sun that comes shall burn them up, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch, says the Lord of hosts. Back to the Talmud. The Gemara asks, are there no more entrances? Didn't Rabbi Marion say, in the name of Rabbi Joshua ben Levy, and some say it was Rabbi Bar Marion who taught in the name of the school of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that there are 2 date trees in the valley of Ben Hinnom. Recognize the name? Gay Ben Hinnom, okay? And the smoke rises from between them. And with regard to this statement about date trees that differ from other palm trees, we learned, the palms of Har HaBarzel, the Mount of Iron, are fit for the mitzvah of palm branches, the lulav that we shake on Sukkot. And this is the entrance to Gehenna. The Gemara answers, this is not difficult, for perhaps this is the entrance in Jerusalem, meaning the entrance to Gehenna in Jerusalem. We also have learned in this class, if you go to the City of David, and you could see it from the City of David video that we have on the channel, that we did many years ago with my brother Levy, the opening scene where we're standing from a place overlooking over their Temple Mount. So this is most likely the place that Abraham stood when he saw Temple Mount, and the whole thing was, going up in fire and smoke, Mount Moriah, across the valley of Ben Hinnom. The name that is translated as hell, like we said, Gehennom, comes from Gay Ben Hinnom. Gay is a valley, Ben the son of Hinnom, Gehennom. I don't know how they got to hell, but sure, same concept. And so in order for Abraham and Isaac to ascend to the mountain of God and to the gate of heaven, as Jacob saw, they first had to descend directly into Gehennom. And that is the valley that stands there till this very day. There's a massive valley over there. That valley is where all the idolaters would throw their own children into the fire and perform all the sexual perversions you could possibly think of in the name of their ritual sacrifices. So Abraham had to actually go through that in a sense. So for context, this is the place we just mentioned in the Talmud, which is in Jerusalem. Now, look what it says next. Rabbi Joshua ben Levy said, Gehenna has 7 names, and they are as follows. Not necessarily all in this particular order. So we have Sheol, which we know. We have Avadon, which, the New Testicle took. They call Abaddon, right? Be'er Shachat, Bor Shon, Tit Hayavin, Tzalmavet, and Eretz Hatachtit. Okay? Now, interesting part in this is Rabbi Joshua ben Levy, who speaks of these 7 realms right here. 7 realms of Gehenna, because there's a midrash called Braita de Rabbi Joshua ben Levy, which is fascinating, and it is shown, in it, he is shown the 7 realms of the Garden of Eden and 1 realm of Gehenna. Now, while it goes into detail about the realms of the Garden of Eden, in Gehenna, he's only shown 1 realm, and this is the one where Avshalom resides. So before we get into that, let's just read what the Talmud says about the 7 realms and where these names actually come from. So we're going to break it down. Sheol, as it is written in Jonah 2:3, and he said, I called out from distress to the Lord, and he answered me from the belly of Sheol. I cried out, you heard my voice. Avadon, what is Avadon? Literally means the land of the lost, la'abed, to be lost. Land of the lost, as written in Psalms 88:12. Will your kindness be told in the grave, your faith in destruction? Let's read the Hebrew. Hayuspal ba'kever chasadecha emunatcha be'avadon. Your faithfulness in Avadon. Be'er shachat. Pit of destruction, as written in Psalms 16:10. Again, reading the English and translating and then reading properly in Hebrew. For you shall not forsake my soul to the grave. You shall not allow your pious ones to see the pit. Kilota azov nafshi lish'ol. You will not forsake my nefesh, not soul necessarily, nefesh to Sheol. I don't know why it says to the grave. Lotiten chasidecha. You shall not allow your pious, lirot, to see, to behold, shachat, be'er shachat, right? The pit of destruction. How about Bor Sha'on and Tit Hayavin, as written in Psalms 40, verse 3? Vaya'aleni mi Bor Sha'on mitit Hayavin, vayakam al sela ragli konen ashurai. And he drew me up out of the roaring pit, okay, from the thick mire, and he set my feet upon a rock. He established my steps. And we have Tzalmavet, Tzel Mavet, the shadow of death, as written in Psalms, I know, but wait, what it says here, 107:10. Yoshvei choshech ve'tzal mavet, asirei ani ubarzel. Those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, prisoners of affliction and iron. And now, of course, from the more famous verse, the one that everybody was thinking, Psalms 23:4, Gam ki elech begei, in the valley, tzal mavet, of the shadow of death, right? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And with regard to the last one, Eretz Tachtit. Eretz is not only land, but it's world. Tachtit, underworld, literally, okay? It is known by tradition that this is its name, the underworld. And there you have the whole Greek and Roman mythology thing. So in fact, when Adam was expelled from the Garden of Eden, before he had a chance to do tshuva, like right away, he was in the underworld. And there he created demons and demonic spirits with his ex-wife and her girlfriend, as said in the Zohar. And that's why whenever you see Ben Adam, son of man, both humans and created spirits and demons, they all came from Adam. All are sons of man. So maybe that dude wasn't lying. There is also another hint towards this Eretz, this earth, this land, in Psalms 88:13, right after he mentions Avadon. Hayivada b'choshech pilaecha v'tzidkatcha be'eretz nashia. Will your wonder be known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of oblivion? hints, like I said. This is fascinating because our sages liken the length of the exile to certain realms of hell. And if you dig into what's there, when you see what the world is like today in 2025, then yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, if you actually see what they are all going through, and then you look today, you're like, we are definitely in the 7 realms of hell here and now. Okay, so we're currently experiencing certain characteristics of these realms of hell on earth. Also, if you missed it, we did a teaching of hell from Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 4, called Creation, the Second Day. The last part from Masechet Eruvin is regarding the word Gehenna. The Gemara poses a question: are there no more names? Meaning for Gehenna. Isn't there the name Gehenna? What about Gehenna? Is that not what it's called? The Gemara answers this, and it's saying it's not a name, rather it is a description. A valley that is as deep as the valley, the Gay Ben Hinnom. An alternative explanation is, into which all descend for vain, chinam, vanity, chinam, right? And wasteful acts, understanding the word chinam as if it were written chinam chinom, meaning for naught, right? Why do you do anything that you do if it doesn't bring you closer to God? Is for chinam. You're doing it for nothing, and it takes you to the valley of nothingness, if you will. So when we say Gehenna, that's the place where most understand as hell, and it has 7 realms within it. But let's not get any more off topic than we have to, okay? Let's see what the man who witnessed Avshalom in hell had to say about it, and that is Rabbi Joshua ben Levy. Rabbi Joshua ben Levy was a sage at the end of the 3rd and start of the 4th century CE. He is considered an Amorah, though he managed to be around at the tail end of the time of the Tanaim, the generation that came before him. Though he has hundreds of his works mentioned throughout the Talmud, and he was the teacher of Reish Lakish. Remember, we dedicated an entire class to him, the gladiator turned rabbi, Reish Lakish. Also, if you missed that class, that is definitely a good one. But that he might be very well most known for what is written upon his deathbed. What he said upon his deathbed: God sent the Satan to him, and God told him, whatever Rabbi Levy asks, grant it to him. Okay, that's what God told the Satan on Rabbi Joshua ben Levy's deathbed. So he said, he asked to see the Garden of Eden, and also later he asked to measure Gehenna. That's where we're going to bring before you right now. We're not going through all the gates of the Garden of Eden and how he even entered there, because he was very sneaky what he did with the Satan. If you want, you could look it up. I'll not read everything, and we'll also skip over some parts, especially the names of angels, but you will get the gist of it. We are not allowed to speak names of angels, except from the common named angels, which is Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. The other names of the angels, even when we say Memtet, better known as Metatron, even that is not the best thing to say, okay? We refer to it as Memtet. So, let's get into it. This is from the Braita of Rabbi Joshua ben Levy. Furthermore, I asked Rabbi Joshua ben Levy, I asked to measure Gehenna and to see it, but I was not granted permission, since the righteous are not allowed to see Gehenna, because it gives so much sorrow that if you are righteous, God doesn't want you to experience that. You should not, because still it has some sort of form of corruption. I'm going to skip over a bunch over here, and then we're going with this. One day, I went to a certain angel. When I say a certain angel, I'm not naming the name of the angel. I'm saying a certain angel. A certain angel, and requested of him to take me to see Gehenna. And the light accompanied me until I reached the gates of hell, and they were open. The wicked who were there saw the light and rejoiced, saying to one another, this is the light that will take us out of here. This was the light that stuck with him, right? Because he just left, like we said, he just left the Garden of Eden, and so that light accompanied him until the gates of hell. The good light that was saved for the righteous on the first day of creation. So they saw this light in hell, and they're like, oh, now it's our time to get out of here. And I saw houses whose length was 10 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. That's a big house. And within them, there were many pits of fire consuming the wicked. When the text refers to a house, it's usually a section within a realm for that specific judgment. Everything is grouped and categorized. Everything. So you see, there is order even in hell as well, just like there is to all of creation. Nothing is mixed up. Everything they're trying to do today is to mix everything up, to confuse. There is order. And once the fire consumed them, they would once again stand above the fire, only to be thrown in and consumed again and again and again. In that same house, there were 10 nations of the nations of the world, and Avshalom, the son of David, was in charge of them. Now, it doesn't go into detail who these nations are, nor is it important to our story. But if it's bugging you, the answer is that it's the top 10 nations of the world, beginning with Rome, right? All this can be found in Masechet Avodah Zarah 2a and b. So let's continue. So you have, Rome is basically the leader. So let's continue. And each nation would say to one another, if we had sinned since we did not receive the Torah, what then is your sin? And they would answer, we are like you, meaning they rejected the Torah as well. One nation was saying to the other, we didn't receive the Torah. Oh, we also didn't. We also rejected the Torah. So remember what happened before God gave the Torah to Israel? He went to each one of the ministering angels of the nations, representing the nations, and say, hey, you want the Torah? What's in it? We had a whole class about this. What's in it for me? What do I get out of it? What can I not do from it? Give it to Israel. It will definitely restrict them and inhibit them. This way we will be able to take them over. Why did God do this? So in the end, all the nations will have to testify, we rejected the Torah, they accepted the Torah, they received the Torah, they lived by the Torah. Nothing more to say after this. That's why. Okay. So they, the nations, then said to Avshalom, why are you here? If you and your forefathers received the Torah, because Avshalom is still from the seed of David, right? He answered them saying, I am here for not having heeded the commands of my father. And there were angels on all sides, and they kept on beating the nations with rods. These are angels of destruction, knocking them into the fire as they all got burned. The angels then run over to Avshalom as they want to beat him with the rods and throw him into the fire. But a voice from heaven says to them, do not beat him and do not burn him, for he is of the seed of Israel, who had said before me, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. And he is the son of David, my servant. So hands off. Yes, he is in hell, but he doesn't go into the pits of fire like the rest of the nations. Hands off. And the angels then place him on a throne and seat him with honor of a king. So in other words, he is now quite literally reigning in hell. They once again take out the wicked ones of the nations from the fire as they had not been burned at all. In other words, like all of a sudden they're back to being brand new, and continue to burn them again and again and again, 7 times a day. 4 during the day, 3 times at night, and Avshalom is saved from all of these, for he is the son of David. Now that's the Midrash, and variations of this are mentioned throughout our texts. Now that we know this, we could continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yosef says, there are 7 entrances to Gehenna. Like we said, 7 realms, 7 entrances, and Avshalom entered into 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're actually leveled. Oh, and by the way, I didn't write this in the drash, but these 7 levels, there are 7 levels beneath the earth as well. Shiva aratzot, beneath the earth. Within one of these levels, that's where these 7 realms of hell actually are, and they also have measurements, which is bigger than the entire world, so you understand. In other words, this is both physical, and yet it's almost like a pocket dimension within the physical reality. Same thing like the Ark of the Covenant technically should not be able to fit into the Holy of Holies according to its design. In other words, when it's there, our sages say it doesn't take up space. How is this possible? Same concept. Pocket dimension, if you will. Think Mary Poppins bag, right? Okay. So when David heard this, obviously through Ruach HaKodesh, as he had no clue where someone goes to hell. So when David understood his son is dead, right? And he said, oh no, What's going on over here? He saw where his son went. He began to wail and to lament and called to Avshalom 5 times, saying, "My son," as said in 2 Samuel 19:1. And the king trembled, and he went up to the upper chamber of the gate, and wept, and thus said, as he went, "Oh, my son Avshalom, my son Avshalom, would I have died in your stead, O Avshalom, my son, my son." So 5 times David said, "My son." As a result, David elevated Avshalom within the realms of Gehenna. Like we said, Avshalom commands this realm. Now, I'll bring you more information as to who sits where, because I know some of you nuts out there can't get enough of this good old stuff. So, I'm also going to tell you where I got this from, because you should not be looking there. I'm not going to tell you where I got it from, because you shouldn't be looking there on your own, but I give you my word, this is legit. I have sources. Okay, so there are 7 realms of Gehenna, and these are their names. Like we said, so we listed them before, and here's their measurements. Sheol, as it is a 300-year walk. It's bigger than the whole world. See what I'm saying? And yet still it is compounded within. It's a 300-year walk, and there Korach and his clan were judged by burning of the flesh for 12 months. And still, so there's no more burning of the flesh, but they still cannot rise until Mashiach comes. 2, Avadon. And it is a 300-year walk, and there the souls of the wicked are lost. Be'el Shachat, and it is a 300-year walk, and the embezzlers and thieves are judged, those who withhold wages. Not good. Be'el She'on, there are 2 pits there, where they pour from one pit to the other, and the pits never get full. 5, Titayavin, and this is a 300-year walk. There are judged those who are guilty of sexual immorality, as they drown and they never come up. Drown in what now? Exactly. Tzalmavet, the shadow of death, and it is a 300-year walk. There are judged the gossipers and those who speak evil, as they are hanging by their tongues, and many other gross things that go on there. Their judgments are every kind of death, and heavy punishments, those who give the evil eye to the students of the sages, to Torah scholars. Unfortunately, we have plenty today of the Erev Rav within Israel, the way they speak of the Torah scholars, anybody that learns Torah, people with kippot on their head, got a whole house just for them over here. Eretz Tachtit, the underworld, and it is a 300-year walk. That is where Jews who oppose the students of the sages, the Torah scholars, are judged by drowning in the darkness. Next, we have next in the Midrash is going to mention that houses, i.e. the sections within these realms, okay? The first house are filled with many dens of fire lions. After those condemned are consumed by this fire, they are remade and fall again and again, being consumed by these fire lions. The second house, there are 100 million of those who did not receive the Torah, and over them Avshalom is placed to judge them. So if Avshalom was taken down to the 7th, he was then to the 7th. Yes, so the 7th, he was lifted up to the 2nd, okay? Avshalom is placed to judge them, as a voice from heaven said to leave him for the merit of his fathers, and a cruel angel, who we will not name, stands and beats these with a rod of fire, and Avshalom is exempt from this judgment by the merit of his fathers, saying, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear at Mount Sinai. The third house, there are 100 million of those, like the first group, who are judged with rods of fire by an angel, who will not be named, a different angel, and Korach is in charge of them. And Korach and his clan are exempt from this judgment by the merit of them and their fathers, saying, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear at Mount Sinai. So you see, even the wicked of Israel get judged only for 12 months, and then afterwards, the only time they could come up, the only time they could leave Gehenna and go into Gan Eden is when Mashiach comes. That's why they're all praying. If you go back to the teaching on Jonah, you'll see exactly what they are screaming from the pits of hell. Korach, Moshe emet v'torato emet. Moses is true, and the Torah that he teaches is true. The fourth house. There are 100 million of those who did not receive the Torah who are being judged, and over them, who's over them? Yeravam ben Avat is placed to judge them. Who's Yeravam ben Avat? You remember him? And an angel who will not be named stands and beats these with a rod of fire, and Yeravam is saved from the judgment by the merit of Ephraim ben Yosef. He is from the seed of Ephraim, from Joseph, who was supposed to be Mashiach ben Yosef of his time. But what did he do? He instead brought 2 golden calves to put one in the north and one in the center, and he prohibited the kingdom of Israel from ascending to Jerusalem, to the temple of God. This is a big no-no, and this whole idolatry thing, like we said, like we taught in the Calling All Sparks series, this was a precursor to Jebus. So, he specifically was saved. Yeravam is saved from this judgment by the merit of Ephraim ben Yosef, who was perfectly righteous, and by the merit of his forefathers who said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear at Mount Sinai. The fifth house. There are 100 million of those who did not receive the Torah being judged every day like the previous ones, and Ahab, King Ahab, is with them. And there's an angel who beats them with a fire rod, but Ahab is saved from judgment by the merit of his forefathers, who said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear at Mount Sinai. We also did a class in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer about Ahab and the return, in other words, the tshuva process. Please watch that class. The sixth house. There are 100 million of those who did not receive the Torah being judged every day like the previous ones, and Micah, the idolatrous priest, is among them. And there is an angel who beats them with the fire rod. But Micah is saved from judgment by the merit of his forefathers, who said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear at Mount Sinai. Micah was the only child who was saved from being buried alive in the walls of Egypt by Moses. When God said, you think I would actually allow someone who is a true blue Jew be thrown into the river and die, or be sealed up in the wall? These are all from the root of the Erev Rav. Erev Rav, again, can be born from a kosher father and mother, having Jewish blood in them, and yet their spirit is from the Erev Rav. Nevertheless, in a sense, because he was born from Jewish parents, and they said Na'aseh v'nishma later on, that's why he's in hell, but he doesn't partake in, the beatings thereof. The seventh house. There are 100 million of those who did not receive the Torah being judged like the previous ones, and with them, Elisha the other, it says. And he is Elisha ben Abuya, and an angel in charge of them is over them, right? An angel in charge of them, and Elisha is over them, same like the others. In other words, you're in hell, you're not getting out, not until Mashiach comes and sorts everything out, but in the meantime, you're there and you're reigning over that realm, if you will. So again, the reason I'm not saying the names of the angels is because I am not worthy of saying their names out loud, because I don't want them coming after me. This is what happens. When you start naming angels and they turn to you, who do you think you are? They could be holy angels, but you are not holy. Nobody in this world is. So to do that right now, that's on you. If you want to, I'm telling you right now, do not do it. If you want to go there, you have been warned. But their names have their job titles in them, the names of the angels, and they are relevant to the sins and judgments of each house. And if you don't know who Elisha ben Abuya is, it's not Elisha as in like Elijah and Elisha, right? He was a Tana and a massive sage right before the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. But in his later years, he turned and became a heretic against God and his Torah, and was drawn to Roman culture, the Western world. What broke him, and again, we can see this today, how people break and they do not. What broke him is that he saw along the road a father telling his son to climb up the tree and send away the mother bird. okay, which we just read in last week's Parsha. So happens to be the Shiluach HaKen, thereby performing two commands, honor thy father and Shiluach HaKen. And both one of the greatest commands and one of the least commands are actually tied together, that your day shall be lengthened. In other words, he saw this happen. But the boy then fell off the tree and died, and he snapped. Upon his deathbed, his fellow sages never abandoned him. And Rabbi Meir urged him to do tshuva before he died, frustrated and broken, when he was speaking to his soul. Elisha said to Rabbi Meir, would the tshuva of such a sinner like me be accepted? To which Rabbi Meir replied with a verse from Psalms 90, verse 3. Tashev anosh ad daka, vatomar shuvu bnei adam. Listen now, everybody. You bring man. This is not only Jews. This is man. You bring man to a crushing point and you say, return, O sons of men. When he heard this, he wept until his soul eventually left him. He died in regret. In the Talmud, it was discussed that he had no place in the world to come because of his sins. Again, if you are a massive idolater, but you do true tshuva, not if you're like, okay, I'm a massive idolater, but I know I'm going to do tshuva and then everything's going to be flipped. If you are a massive idolater and even on your deathbed, you do tshuva, all your sins, they flip, and you can become a super righteous individual. And you could be a super righteous individual your entire life, and even moments before your death, you rebel against God, it flips on its head. You lose everything. So, like we said, we have him here sitting over the seventh house for now, this guy. So in other words, he was supposed to be in one of those pits, but instead he was reigning in one of the realms of hell specifically. Okay, so whatever Rabbi Meir whispered in his ear, it actually did help him in a sense. Now, we haven't talked about it, but almost everything is subject for change. Now, going back to David and Avshalom, when David said the following in 2 Samuel 19:1, and the king trembled, and he went up to the upper chamber of the gate and wept, and thus he said, and again, upper chamber of the gate, and he wept, and thus he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I have died in your stead? O Avshalom, my son. Mi ten muti ani tachtecha. Listen to this. Translated as, would I have died in your stead? But what it means is, first of all, mi, mem yud, mi is 50, bina, understanding, the shechina. Iten, will give. In other words, David saw where Avshalom was. He saw where he was taken, and he went there. And he was given understanding underneath Avshalom. Ani, mi, tachtecha, underneath you. And every time he called him Bani, he lifted him another level. So David descended, and then ascended 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as if he never sinned in his life. He lifted him to another level, another level, another level. Granted, he could not save him from Gehenna for the laundry list of offenses that he did against God and his anointed, right? The king of Israel and his own father. But at least he's not suffering there. You see, when David saw this, that he had lifted him up 5 levels, he began to praise and sing to his maker, saying from Psalms 86:17, grant me a sign for good, and let my enemies see it, and be ashamed, for you, O Lord, have helped me and have comforted me. Aseh imi ot letova, ve'ir'u sonai ve'yivoshu, may my enemies see and they be ashamed. Ki ata Adonai azartani ve'nichamtani. You helped me and you comforted me. You have helped me by my battle against Avshalom, and you have comforted me from mourning him. And that's our class, and that is our chapter. So if you want, actually, I've done this before, I think, with this same thing, but because we're discussing Avshalom right now in detail, and actually the verse that he said, so I did a narration for a Megalim video in English. It's like an animation depiction of the battle and what happened and David's weeping and wailing in the end. And now you'll actually understand what was going on spiritually speaking behind the scenes. I will put that in the description of the video so you can click on that and it'll give you a better idea. In any case, thank you as always for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.